Hey, Hickok 45. Oh, nice. P08 Luger. And brought to us today by this gun, a 1911. Both really classy, classic firearms, right? In the history of pistols and of firearms, does it get much better? Am I lucky or what? I've got a World War II 1911 on the table, a World War II P08 Luger on the table. That enough said, right? I'm the luckiest man on the planet to be able to have these two firearms here that went to war and were brung back, right? They were brought back, and they are really nice specimens. They're not perfect at all by any means. They show use and wear and character. They both have a little character about them. So pretty cool, pretty cool. So what we're going to do is just kind of talk about the differences between these two, and maybe what I would prefer to have if I had to choose one of those two. I'm not going to go into a 30-40 minute video about discussion about what it was like to be a soldier. Would you rather have had one of these if you were in a foxhole or the trenches of World War I and then World War II? You know, we could write a 4 or 5 books, of course, comparing these two pistols. But since they're both iconic, of course, and we happen to have both of them in our possession, one of them mine, one of them borrowed, well, let's just talk about the differences between these two and some of my observations, and then feel free to chime in with your observations. You might have one or both of these. You might have fired one or both of these extensively, and you know, you can lend your expertise, your experience, what you think about them. I fired both of them, of course. I fired the 1911 extensively, and I fired the P08 a moderate amount. Okay, so I don't have as much experience with it. I've never owned one of my own. So, well, first of all, again, we do want to, in a way, honor both of them. They're both really interesting. You could almost say masterpieces of the machinery. They're both obviously were used extensively, and lots of different situations. The P08 goes back, designed in the late 1890s, and then of course manufactured up through the 1940s and used in World War I, World War II, and of course the 1911, kind of the same time frame initially. You know, it was I guess John Browning started the designs in I think the late 1890s, didn't he? And then of course finalized in this format to some extent. 1911, this one is actually an A1, so 1924, but they're essentially the same. So they both have a lot of history, and of course the 1911 still carries on. That is one major difference, isn't it? So don't really want to bash either one, but we'll bash the P08 a little bit in that regard. I don't know of anybody carrying the Luger, the P08, or a replica of it, or a design for their carry gun. I don't know of any manufacturers who have been scrambling around and copying it for the USPSA competitors or IDPA competitors. I don't see a huge drive for anybody to copy this design. Can we say the same for the 1911? No, it's being copied, it's being manufactured by everybody, isn't it? And it's still in wide use today, even in the military still, and in competition. I started to say millions. I don't know if that's too big a number, but tens of thousands of people still actually carry the 1911, civilians, with their carry permits. So that firearm lives on forever in that design, that drop barrel linked system, lockup style. That's pretty much the basis for most semi-automatics today, I guess you could say. So we got to give the nod to the old 1911 for that, don't we, and to Mr. John Browning. Even though this is a really ingenious design, and it's fascinating to work with it, that toggle lock system, it's really interesting. Put an empty mag in it. It's just fascinating. I tell you what this reminds me of. It reminds me of comparing a Colt single action to, say, a Schofield, Smith & Wesson. I'm fascinated by the Schofield and the Smith & Wesson, the old Frontier revolvers, but I guess the nod still goes to the Colt single action in terms of maybe a more durable firearm. But just the way this thing operates is so interesting, and the close tolerances, it's a marvel of machinery. It really is. Probably would not hold up as well in a really dirty environment, you know. Although it is so tight that it's not as likely to get as much dirt in it just by the sheer design. Take the magazine out. But that's one of the knocks on it, is probably not going to stand up as well in a muddy trench and that kind of thing. Well, let's take a couple of shots and see if it will actually fire before we badmouth it too much. How's that? Okay. The P08, this was made by Mauser. It's a 1939 model. Got a loaded magazine in it, so we pull up on the toggle, charge the first round. We see there's a round in the chamber. I can tell by the chamber indicator there, loaded chamber indicator. Okay. I think they copied that from Luger. Pretty funny, huh? Oh, what shall we try to hit? Let's see. I think I've discovered the sights are pretty much on. We have our first hang up with it. There we go. Let's try that flower pot. Nice. Well, I'll be darned. We've been really fortunate up to now. We've not had any hang-ups with it. That magazine. It's acting up, isn't it? That's Winchester white box, same stuff we used in the original video with it. Put that back in. Like I said, maybe it's more fragile. Nice. Try to put one on that orange one. I guess that's empty. Yeah, the mag didn't hold the slide back, or the toggle back. All right. Well, in its defense, we've really not had much trouble like that. But I guess it heard me bad mouthing it, right? It really did. So see, that was that magazine. I'll remember that. That's not the original magazine. But where is that? Was that the one? Let's say 3656. No, that is the original magazine. Okay, this is a Mauser magazine, but it's not the original. It's not marked. Okay, so a little issue there. It is considered to be one that would not withstand a lot of dirt and a lot of crud, and because of the close tolerances. But it's an ingenious design. It's not as quick to take down. If you saw me take it down, I struggled more than I should have, but it does involve a little bit more than the 1911 in terms of takedown. They both are fun to shoot. They're both, of course, firearms that everybody would like to own, put it that way. But again, this design is not necessarily the ideal design for a carry piece. Here's a couple of things ergonomically speaking that I don't like about it as well as I do the 1911, for example. Make sure she's clear again. Okay. The safety, you got a hold of it, let's say. Okay. Thumb safety, not exactly, and now I have a longer thumb, granted, but still, yeah, there it is. Okay, let's get the safety off and get her grip reacquired there. So you've got that issue, whereas with the 1911, you know, it's hard to beat. You know, you can rake it up and back and forth, even if you have a long thumb like I do. You know. Same with the magazine release, the empty magazine. Okay, I want to just release the mag. Well, I've got to change grips or use this hand. Get up there on that. You know. So probably designed so you wouldn't accidentally release the magazine, but still not exactly IPSC friendly, to say the least. And I did struggle with the breakdown of it, of course, a little bit. So the contour, the grip and everything, even though Luger copied that, I don't necessarily like it. And a lot of people brag about the way it points when you grab it. It's okay, but I don't know, I'm not crazy about that. I prefer the feel of the 1911, even though I don't like the hump, you know, in this version of it. It feels better than that to me. It just does. Let's take a couple of shots with this baby. We don't want to neglect a 1911. My ears back on. Some old hardball. All right. Forgot about that heavy trigger. Pretty nice. Good old slab sides. The workhorse right there, the 1911. Which brings up another topic. This firearm, the P08, the Luger, it really wasn't meant to be a workhorse. You hear that word in association with the 1911 a lot, because we wanted as many soldiers to have the 1911 as we could possibly outfit. And so it was not uncommon to see an infantryman, with a 1911 in battle. It's a fighting handgun. It was designed to be. That's what it was designed for. Not just something for only officers to carry around and look pretty and be proud of. The Luger, the P08, in some ways was just kind of a badge of honor, a badge of authority, that an officer would have in most cases, as I understand. So you got a little bit of difference there in purpose, I guess. So that's another thing to factor in. Of course, it maybe wasn't as important for this to be a workhorse like the old 1911 that would withstand the mud and the grit and keep on trucking. This gun is made to looser tolerances. I think most people would agree, and some might even criticize it for that. Not I. I never really have. It's never really bothered me. I have competed in USPSA with 1911s that were loose. You rattle. Hey, they still outshoot me. They shoot better than I can shoot. So there are still people who pick one up and, it's a little loose, I almost want to laugh. They probably couldn't hit that tombstone there with any handgun, and they're complaining about it being loose. I shouldn't say that, but anyway, they do just fine even if they have loose tolerances. Now the gun does seem accurate, and I'm going to shoot it again. I'm going to give it another chance. And then one thing I wanted to point out too is that the magazine in this firearm is very awkward to load. Let's try the other magazine. You can't just stick the rounds in. Well, this one you can, can't you? We tried it in the other one. Oh, okay. John and I were experimenting earlier because, the magazine was hard to load. It does get hard. You got this little button. That little button kills your thumb. The spring is extremely tight. It is really hard to push it down. I tell you. After I load one of these, I have to change hands in the middle here because my thumb is about ripped off. Trying to get that loaded. Let me load the other one. Since we had the little malfunction, let's give it another chance here. This is just Winchester white box, but in the original video, it was doing fine with it. So, oh man, get that other thumb on it. The same concept that the Ruger uses on some of their magazines, but it works a lot better on the Ruger. Ouch. Hurts. I can get another round in there without taking all the skin off my thumb. Okay, by comparison now, look how hard the 1911 magazine is to load. I don't even use a speed loader on these. They just slide in there beautifully. Just beautifully. No trouble at all. Okay, now we're not comparing 45 with 9mm, by the way. You saw my video on this. This firearm was actually submitted to the trials in the United States in 1906, 1907, when we were looking at firearms, okay, and evaluating them. So Luger made 2 or more of these in 45 ACP and submitted it. So we could have actually been carrying this thing around for the last 50 years in 45 ACP. So in that sense, we're not comparing 9 with 45. That old argument never goes away, does it? We're mainly looking at the design of the firearms. All right, let's shoot this thing a little more here. Let's put it in the holster. Let's say I had to load that magazine in a hurry, I'd be in trouble, wouldn't I? Put it on. I'll go ahead and charge the chamber. Put it on safe. We'll put it in this do-all holster I have. Okay. Now let's say I needed to pull it out and shoot kind of in a hurry. Let me try that. So I pull it out and I go, there we go. Okay, I went backwards. Let me try that again. It's on safe. Okay, I've got to pull it out, take the safety off. I can't just, there we go. Kind of awkward. There we go. All right, works okay once you get it shooting. And while we've got her hot, let's do it again. Put one in the chamber. Safety is on. Boom. That's that magazine that was acting up before, isn't it? Okay. Maybe it doesn't like to be fully loaded. Okay, so a little awkward to work on the controls with any kind of, I don't know, smoothness or speed. That's kind of my opinion. Whereas this baby, let's load him up, put around the chamber, put it on safe, put it in the holster, and then let's just pull it out and shoot this watermelon. I think I hit the post. Oh well. Do that again. Safety on. Safety on. Just a lot more convenient to use, and then in terms of reloading, works a lot better. I can pop that next round, magazine in there, put the slide down, keep at it. Okay. 1911. You notice this does not have a slide lock either. So, if the magazine doesn't hold it back, you're going to have, you're just going to have to work with the toggle link. Okay. So some of that's nitpicky, of course, nitpicky stuff I'm talking about. I realize, but both guns have a lot of history, and both guns are very interesting. They're, I would say designed by geniuses, in the firearms world. But the P08, looking at the history, is a little different from John Browning's design, because John Browning pretty much designed this from the inception. They went through kind of an evolution, through the the first decade, I guess you'd say, of the 1900s, more so than any other time. He may have started on that in the late 1890s, but it was his baby. It's his baby. This is a firearm that was based on the Porchard C93, a firearm that was already around that had this toggle lock system on it, which comes from Maxim, the machine gun. And it was kind of a quirky gun, a bigger gun, and there weren't a lot of them made, and it had its problems. So the Luger, the P08, is more or less Luger's fix of that C93. He just kind of made it better, And he did. I think he made it a lot better. But that's what you've got. So his taking a design and then improving upon it and trying to make maybe the best of it, in a lot of ways. So it's an iconic firearm, though, isn't it? I mean, it is just an iconic firearm. This is the Mauser version, as I said earlier. Pretty cool. Let's take just a couple more shots with each one, and we'll wrap it up. I'm going to use this magazine again on this one and see if I can have good luck with it again. I mean, these are really cool guns. I'm privileged to be able to shoot them, especially since they're not even reproductions. They were there. This one was in the Pacific, a minesweeper. I've given you the history on that before. The fella brought it back. He tried to scratch off. He was afraid to get in trouble, this old guy, and he scratched that off a little bit. and it wasn't a big deal. A lot of people brought them back and got by with it. I think I've told you that story before. My father said they were almost threatened, you know, to the point where he was afraid to try to bring his back, but I wish he had. He said they didn't even check their bags or anything. He could have brought back 5 or 6, he said. And so the history of these is pretty cool, pretty cool. They are just inanimate objects, pieces of steel, plastic or wood, have no minds of their own, of course. Several countries adopted, well, both of these firearms, but you know, the P08 was adopted by the Swiss, and in the early years, 1901, 1900, long in there. So they're used in different countries and carried. And again, this was mostly something carried by officers, but really neat. As I tell you, even if you would never carry something like this, or you wouldn't even trust it enough to depend on it to protect your life, it's a fascinating firearm the way it functions. It really, I wouldn't mind having one. They're very expensive. They're really neat. They're really neat. I may have to have one in the collection one day. So my criticism of it is just in comparison with other firearms mostly. Oh, let's try it again. Okay, got to shoot them both one more time for you. Some of you may never get a chance to shoot a Luger, so as hard as it is, as much as I hate to do it, I'm going to do it for you. That's just the kind of friend I am. I'll do it for you. Let's shoot it one-handed, since it's really designed that way. Actually feels better, I think, with one hand. Yeah, shoots well. Still getting a little bit of a hang up there though. Okay. Clear that out. That mag's empty. Okay, so the Mauser, the P08, the Luger. All right, let's finish this guy off. Now, I shouldn't say it out loud. I've had this for several years, and every time we bring it out and fire it, I don't think we've ever had a malfunction with it. And it's been through the war. Is that beautiful or what? Good old 1911. What a pretty gun. I really, it's not a setup, to make the Luger look bad, to malfunction. It really has not been malfunctioning with it. It's been doing fine. So, but be that as it may, you never know about Winchester white box. So, 2 beautiful firearms, both with history, that take us back into the 1930s and 40s, and when both of these were made, the P08 in 1939, this one in the early 40s, and both carried during World War II, and they both still work and fun to shoot. Pretty cool. Do I even have to say it? Life really is good.
Mm-hmm.